The Defense Department at the highest levels, the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense, both gave overt assurances that Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman would not face any retaliation for him testifying in the impeachment inquiry after he was subpoenaed to do so. Those defense officials said they would protect Colonel Vindman. They would allow no retaliation against him whatsoever. Those assurances came in November and in December after Colonel Vindman did testify in the impeachment inquiry. Well, those same defense officials have since said nothing in response to Colonel Vindman being marched off the White House grounds on Friday and removed from his National Security Council job, along with, oddly, his brother, who had nothing whatsoever to do with the impeachment inquiry. A former senior advisor to National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, Fernando Coots, told the Washington Post, quote, "Every career official will tell you it is not just chilling, but frightening." He also says that retribution from the White House was exacted on the two Vindmans, on both Alexander Vindman and his brother, well before Friday's firings. Quote, on Ukraine policy, Alexander Vindman was sidelined, says Coots, who keeps in touch with staffers who are still serving. Quote, he hasn't been playing a key role. He had not been in the room. As for his brother, quote, White House officials instructed National Security Council staff to bypass Yevgeny Vindman on ethics matters and take questions directly to the White House counsel's office instead, according to Coots. Coots said, quote, you're seeing things happen in an unprecedented way that even Nixon didn't do. The broader message to career officials is that you can't speak up. Even if you see something illegal, something unethical, you can't speak up. That's the message the president wants to send. Joining us now is Fernando Coots, who is a former National Security Council staffer, former senior advisor to National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. Mr. Coots, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Rachel.
I have to ask you, start with a little bit of a meta question. Your comments about the chilling effect that recent events have caused among National Security Council current staffers and generally in the field. I have to wonder if that applies to you as well, and if you are also thinking about potential consequences about speaking out in this way.
Well, you know, it is a very dangerous thing these days to speak up. But I know that the folks who still work at the White House today, the folks who still work all over the U.S. government right now, are career professionals. They have sworn an oath to the Constitution of the United States, and they will uphold that oath. I have no doubt about that, no matter what kind of different techniques or intimidation or anything else that might try to be fallen their way. And so while they might not be able to speak right now for themselves because of their position in government, I, who have left government, am able to try to help them out right now. And so that's what I'm trying to do on their behalf. But again, I have no doubt that the chilling effect and the fear that the president is trying to put on them, it's not going to work. And they will keep doing what they need to do to uphold their oaths to the Constitution and to our laws.
I have to say that I'm not terribly surprised by the president's instincts in this regard. I feel like he's telegraphed for a long time that this type of revenge is sort of what he considers to be among his legitimate tools for exerting power. In the case of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, I have to tell you that what sticks with me and what sort of has kept me awake about this case is not just that the president took this action, but that specifically for Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, after he gave that testimony, there was an effort to essentially insulate him from something like this happening. The Secretary of Defense, the Deputy Defense Secretary, talking about a serving military officer saying, under law, we will allow no retaliation against him, promising in advance that they would take action to prevent this. And then it still happened. We've heard nothing from the Defense Department. I mean, as a civilian watching this from the outside, that is the part of it that feels most chilling to me. But as somebody who's worked at the high levels in the National Security Council, do you feel like that's an appropriate way to look at this, or should I take a different angle?
Well, absolutely. You know, I think at the end of the day, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman did not go out and decide to speak publicly to the press. He didn't start tweeting about what he saw or what he disagreed with or agreed with. He followed a lawful subpoena by the United States Congress. And he attended that subpoena after he was summoned, and he testified under oath about what he said happened at that moment, and then he left and went back to work. That's all he did, to be clear, right? He didn't write a book, he didn't write an op-ed, he didn't go speak to the press. So he has followed the rule of law thoroughly and fully, he cannot be blamed. Neither can anybody else involved in this situation who was merely following the lawfully issued orders by the United States Congress. And therefore, it's absurd to have any kind of retaliatory action against these officials. Now, when you serve at the White House, you serve at the pleasure of the president. And so the president can certainly remove you from the role because he doesn't like you anymore, doesn't trust you anymore. And that's within their rights. And from what I've heard from reporting today, it sounds like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman himself knew that things were probably not looking good, and he was about to resign. But I think the president wanted to jump the gun and not allow him a graceful exit and actually fire him on Friday. So again, it's really purely vindictive at this point. It's a sad state of affairs, and it sends a very bad message to our men and women who are serving our country, both in military uniform but also civilians, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep our country safe.
Fernando Coots, former National Security Council official, former advisor to National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. Mr. Coots, thank you for your service, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.